this time of the year is so exciting for homeschool families, especially for homeschool moms. The kids, they're not always quite gung-ho about it, especially as they get to those later elementary years, and it's okay. We always win them over. But also, has been a fun week for me for the Back to Homeschool series. Today is the final day in that series, and tomorrow is the final day where you can bundle together your homeschool blueprint and the Tidy Home and get both of those courses right now. You can get started today on them for an amazing price. You'll be saving over $55 when you purchase both of these bundled together. And this sale, though, it ends tomorrow, August 9th at midnight. You can jump in and get going on that at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/bundle. I encourage you to do that now because guess what? You're going to forget. I often forget things too. So go ahead and pull that up on your phone, and you can even pause this episode and do that, or pull it up on your phone and get to it after this episode. But today we are going to dig in and we're going to figure out how to get your homeschool set up for this homeschool year.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
You're probably looking at your days. You're looking at the calendar. You're looking at how am I going to get everything scheduled? How are we going to come up with a routine, a rhythm? How are we going to accomplish all of our goals? Remember those goals that we talked about earlier this week? There is so much time in every day. How can I keep it organized? As well as tempering that with the expectations that you have for yourself and your homeschool. Maybe the expectations that your husband has for the education of your children. And then also the expectations of your school district and the homeschool regulations you have. Now, maybe you live in a state where there really aren't any and you are free to do whatever you please. But some of us live in pretty strict states, and so we have to balance that with what we need to accomplish for the school district and to provide proof to the school district. But you also want your kids to be well educated and prepared for the world. Now, that latter part of being prepared for the world, I think we have learned over the past couple years that things are changing just so rapidly that it's hard to really fully know. If you have, say, a 5-year-old or even a 10-year-old, what is the world going to look like when they are done with their homeschool, when they graduate from homeschool? It could be very different. I feel like when it was the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, things kind of still, you could project what things are going to be like, but things have rapidly changed, and that's okay. I think that it is actually should be a part, I should say, of your homeschool, of teaching adaptability to your children and teaching them to be able to look out and look on the horizon and see what is going on and being able to figure out what exactly is going on, what's beneath the surface, and know how to live in and through that. But you want your kids to be well educated and prepared for the world. And today, I'm going to throw some options onto the table for you. It's just kind of like we've got this empty table, and I'm just going to throw it all out there for you. And I want you to pick up the options that work for you for just this homeschool year. Take those other options and tuck them into your back pocket. Have them as an option to change to during the homeschool year. If you find that your original schedule and routine and the original things that you set up is just not working, you know of what some options are. When I began homeschooling and I had 3 little kids, I've already admitted to this, basically tried to replicate the school at home. Guess what? It was an epic fail. I tried really hard because it was all that I knew. I found our groove, and it would change a little bit every single year, but we've figured it out somewhere in the middle of being more traditional and following the school and being all completely open and free. And I found that groove, and that felt good and that felt safe. But I had no idea about all these different options. I felt like at the time I was groping around in the dark. I didn't have all these resources. I didn't have podcasts. I didn't have necessarily many books. I eventually found blogs, and that was where I was able to find some information, and it was so helpful. But I'm going to throw some ideas out to you here now, whether this is your first year or you've been homeschooling for a couple years or you've been at it for a while. I think it's a good way to refresh and to know what your options are. So, are you ready? You might want to grab a pen and paper so you can write these down and then you can work through them a little bit more after the episode. We're going to start this exercise of getting a schedule and getting things figured out. Now, again, I say schedule because it is just a common word that you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I highly discourage you from having a schedule such as from 8 a.m. until 8:45 we do this, 8:45 to 9:15 we do this. That is a schedule, and that's what the school does. We're going to talk about schedule more so in a bigger, broader sense of the word, and we're going to start off in, again, a broad sense, and we're going to narrow it down. So we're going to start with talking about the entire year, and then we're going to bring it down to the days. And at the end of that, I've got some, we'll say, sage advice about how this actually can be pulled off. So make sure you stick around for that. Let's first look at the calendar, and let's set up your yearly schedule. Take a look now. It is August, and I am going to assume that you're going to use a traditional school calendar, which might be beginning in July or August, and then going for 12 months from there. Sometimes families like to start off and they like to switch at some point and do more of a yearly calendar of January. We're not to the Monday yet. January through December. But I'm going to assume that you're going to stick with this starting off in July, August, September. Even some families start in October. But also take a look at what your homeschool regulations are, because those calendars can kind of help you. I have found it easier just to follow that because it just makes it easier for reporting's sake when I have to send in paperwork. But take a look at the yearly schedule. Get a whole calendar. And literally get a whole calendar and look at it. You can find ones free online. And then block off the days that you know you're not going to do school. That could be weekends. Most of us don't do any type of formal curriculum or formal academics on the weekends. Sometimes there's kids who want to do so, and you can go ahead and let them do that. Some families might have a parent or both parents that are working on a weekend, and so they might take some days off for the week. Then just go ahead and cross those days off. But cross off the days that you know that you will not be doing homeschool. You could sit right now and look at, over the Christmas break, the holiday break, what do you want to take off? Some families take the entire month of December off. Some take from Thanksgiving on until after New Year's off. Some just take the week in between Christmas and New Year's off. There were times that I didn't even take that much time off because my husband didn't get that much time off of work. And I figured we were home, and we were home a lot of days. It didn't hurt to do a little bit of homeschool. My kids weren't always quite thrilled, but it's okay. We lived. I didn't have the need in that season. And also look at that, because that was a season for me where I didn't need to take off weeks for Christmas. We might not have been traveling much that year, and we were just home a lot. It was just a season where it was just a bit more quiet. So I figured, why not? But take a look at the entire homeschool year and figure out the days you don't want to do homeschool. Then look at what's left. Now, I'm going to go with the legal counsel here, and you can interpret and do what you want with this. But most states that have homeschool regulations and overall public schools, and when they say that education occurs, has to be 180 days. I have lived and homeschooled in 2 different states, and that was the requirement, that you were supposed to do 180 days, and I would have to provide proof of 180 days. We're not going to talk off the record here or anything. If you and I were sitting down to a cup of coffee, we could talk off the record a little bit about that. But decide on your 180 days, knowing that those 180 days, especially when you have younger children, this isn't necessarily if you have, say, a high schooler who is in 10th grade, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade, and they are planning on going to college, and they want to have a certain GPA, and they want to jump straight into some courses, and they need to make sure that they get in all of their curriculum and all of their resources and all of their courses and classes. That is going to be different than when you have a handful or a couple or one homeschooler who is in their younger years. And so take a look at those 180 days, knowing that not all of those days, especially for the younger ones, is formal education. It could be, or you might aim for 150 where we're doing our formal education. It really is up to you. And this might sound overwhelming for some of you. I know some of you are like, I like to have some boundaries, some borderlines. I like guardrails. I like somebody to tell me what exactly to do. And it might take you a little while to get used to the freedom, but I want to encourage you to embrace that freedom of creating a homeschool lifestyle that suits your family. Okay, so now you've taken a look at the entire 12 months and you have figured out and narrowed it down to the days you're not doing homeschool, the days that you are doing homeschool, and you've got your 180 days. Okay, we're going to keep it straight and forward. I'm going to stay on the straight and narrow and not get myself into trouble here with that. The second thing is to take a look at your weeks, because all of those months are comprised of weeks. And we're going to get our week set up. Decide on things like, do I want to do homeschool 5 days a week? Do I want to do homeschool 4 days a week? Do I want to do homeschool 3 days a week? Again, this is going to depend upon the age of your children. It's going to depend upon your goals. It's going to depend upon your homeschool style. It's going to depend upon the personalities of your kids and your overall, what you are trying to accomplish with your home education. Traditionally, most people go with a 5-day homeschool week. Some choose a 4-day week and they might only do 4 days. And that 5th day is a day maybe you go and just have fun, or you're just chilling at home, getting chores done. Or sometimes they might do 4 days and that one day is an extracurricular or some type of activity or a field trip. So decide on how many days a week overall, knowing that sometimes you're not even you might say 5 days and you might not get those 5 days in because something comes up. Then also decide, take a look at, what do I have going on? What are we committed to? What co-ops are we committed to? What outside groups? What activities? What sports are we committed to? Does dad have different days off than maybe traditionally people have off for the weekends? Maybe dad has off one day on a weekend and one day during the week, and you decide you're going to do school on the days that he is at work, or 4 of the days that he is at work. So take that into consideration. And when it comes to co-ops, that is a quote-unquote school day. You can count that towards your 180 days if you are counting, knowing that education is happening at that time. So you might say, we have co-op once a week, and it is for a couple of hours, and I don't want to do any other homeschool that day. That is sufficient for our family. Well, then when you take a look at your curriculum, you are only going to do that 4 days a week because you have that co-op. Then also think, are there lessons, are there things that I have to do or that our children are required to do for the co-op in between? And that's going to help guide the amount of days, and that's going to guide also what you do during those days. Now, some co-ops are purely just for fun. Some of them are just you go and you might have education. It actually is education. You might actually have a science class, a history class, but there's nothing to do in between. Some co-ops, there is a lot of work, and it actually does dictate what you're doing outside of co-op. And so you need to figure out which one is going to be best for you and if you have co-ops. Now, if you don't have a co-op, that's okay too. I did do an episode way back about co-ops, and it really is a personal preference. And also it has to be a preference for this year for you. Just because you've done a co-op doesn't mean you always have to do a co-op. And just because you've never done a co-op doesn't mean you cannot join a co-op. So set up your weekly schedule. Figure out what days you're going to make a priority in order to accomplish your homeschool curriculum goals. Now let's get a little bit more nitty-gritty, and we're going to talk about the daily. Okay, so you can get done with your curriculum because you've taken the time, you've purchased the curriculum. If you are like, I'm still a little bit up in the air about some of this curriculum, go back and listen to earlier this week when I talked all about curriculum and how to get that chosen and picked, and then to get it ordered, and then to move on with your life. But you want to get done with this curriculum because you want your kids to absorb the information. You want them to learn what's in it, and you've chosen it. You've taken the time, and it is something that you want to pour into your family, and it is going to act as your guide for those different subjects. When it comes to those subjects, you need to decide which subjects are going to be everyday subjects. What are the ones that we are going to do every single day that you've set up for those weeks that then go into all of those months that we set up in the very beginning? And some of those subjects to do every single day that most families do is math and language arts, because you just do a little every single day of homeschool. When I say every single day, I'm not talking 7 days a week. Now, sometimes some kids want to do it every single day, and there could be some kids that you are saying, I can't even take a day off from math. They just kind of seem to lose it. And we're in a really critical time of learning some math facts. And I'm finding out that just to do 10 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes every single day, 7 days a week is really what is working for that child, then please, I encourage you to do that. We really have to look at what is going to serve the needs and to pour into our kids and going to help them learn what we want them to learn. Now, not everything has to come from a curriculum, but today we're kind of focused a little bit more on that. So take a look at your subjects and decide which ones are going to be every single day. And then also take a look at whether you want to do everything, all of the subjects every single day. Sometimes you do. So what I mean by that is you might take a look and say we have math, we have language arts, we have history, we have science, we have geography, we have maybe music, art, I don't know, all the subjects. And you might say, I want to do all of them every single day. Well, doing all of them every single day is going to mean you're going to do each of them for less time. We're not doing math for an hour, language arts for an hour, history for an hour, science for an hour, geography for an hour. That is way too much time. You can decide it is better for my family to do smaller chunks of all of the subjects. Or you can say, we are going to do our everyday subjects of math and language arts, and then we're going to do our other subjects and we're going to do them more of a bulk. So maybe Monday is going to be science day. Tuesday is history. Maybe Wednesday is a co-op. So then Thursday, you're like, we're going to do geography. And on Friday, we're going to do art. That's actually calling it a loop schedule where you can loop things together. So I know I gave the days of the week, but it doesn't always have to be on those days. When you loop it, it's not necessarily on that day of the week. You'll just say day 1, we're going to do science, because say on Monday you get your math and your language arts done, and then you have a dentist appointment to get to, and you don't get to your science. And then the next Monday, maybe the dog has an appointment at the veterinarian, and maybe the next Monday you have a play date and you don't get to science for 3 weeks. But if you put it on a loop and say on day 1, we're going to do science, you will then get to it, if that makes sense. So you have a schedule for subject for day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I mean, you could only have 2 if you want. It's up to you how many you want to loop. Basically, what it comes down to is you are deciding when you want to do which subjects. There might be some subjects you might say, I want to do 3 to 4 times a week. I don't want to necessarily do 5 times a week like the everyday. You might be some subjects you want to do 1 to 2 times a week. And it really does depend on how do you think your kids are going to learn this information best. And maybe some of those days, so say for science, some of the days might involve going through your curriculum, reading through it. Another day might be actually going out and exploring the world. Another day might be watching videos that have to do and support with the science that you are studying. It doesn't have to be just looking at the books. Now, we go into depth with all of these things in your homeschool blueprint. So if you're like, oh no, I'm feeling a little bit lost, I don't know which direction to go in, and I'm not really quite sure what all of these terms mean, we're going to go in depth into it in your homeschool blueprint. But overall, get this set up so that you have the groundwork, you have the foundation. But remember, life with kids is full of unexpectedness, and that doesn't end. I just got a phone call from my 19-year-old. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's unexpected. So, all right, that's going to shift a little bit of things, and that's okay. It's learning flexibility and learning grace. Understanding that it is great to have these guardrails, these boundaries, this direction of this is the days we're going to do, but understand things come up. Kids wake up, they're not feeling very well. Dog wakes up, not feeling very well. It's a beautiful day. You're like, you know what? We're not going to miss this beautiful day. We're going to go outside and we're going to go do some fun stuff. Just understanding that things come up and life is unexpected with kids, and it's what we do with that. We can redeem the day, and that doesn't mean that just because you don't redeem the day with your curriculum that it was a bad day. You can redeem the day in other ways by being flexible and by having grace. But I have always found it felt really good and safe for me to have that foundation for me to go back to, because sometimes we can also get off course one day, then the next day, and then maybe the third day, and then we have a very difficult time getting back on course if we don't have a course. So same goes for, I'll give you an example of working out. Maybe something comes up and you aren't able to work out for a couple days or a couple of weeks. Maybe there's an injury or there's something going on with family. There's some reason why you can't. It is so hard to get back into starting over again. And it's not starting over again. You're just getting back into it. And so it's going to take your commitment to it, because you're not always going to feel motivated. And this can happen easily with homeschool. We can get off course and not get back into it. But if you have this foundation, you have this framework, you can say, nope, tomorrow we are getting back into it. and you already have it all set up. You already have your quote unquote schedule. You have it figured out, and all you have to do is go and implement it because you are committed to homeschooling. Before we close out today and this awesome week of the Back to Homeschool series, don't forget the bundle of your homeschool blueprint and the Tidy Home ends tomorrow, August 9th at midnight, and you can get started and save over $55 when you get joined up with both of those courses at once at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/bundle. I want you to go into this homeschool year with your homeschool, having that groundwork, that foundation super solid, which is going to be even more than what we just even talked about today, which is what you'll do in your homeschool blueprint. And then to have the system in place where you just basically rinse and repeat and get your chores done so that the rest of your time, you don't have to be worried about that. Let's take the worry off of your plate, off of the table when it comes to your homeschool and with keeping up with your chore system by getting into this bundle. I look forward to seeing you over there, and thank you for joining me this week for the Back to Homeschool series.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.